who were elected by the Bahamian people for 52 years. In other islands, it was done the same way. Great Britain was reigning and ruling. On the 2nd of June, I celebrate my 43rd birthday. On that day, on that very same day, Queen Elizabeth II will celebrate 60 years. You see, Bahamas is 60 years on the day of my birthday. I'm the only young man in Bahamian history. On Monday, I'll call you. Only young man. Say, call on.
Unless you allow them to do it to you. Anna James, you better sing, girl.
No one can do.
KFC.
The show is over, so I can cut it down now. Ask, and it will be given you. The people of the Bahamas have been asking the Bahamian government, both parties who have governed our country, the majority of the average Bahamian have been asking, primarily the government of the Bahamas, to hear their cry. Bahamas, your cry is not heard because of the lifestyle we choose to live. Every man need a woman, and every woman want to be loved, and everybody want to be loved by somebody. The natural resources of our country would cause the majority of those men in that prison. Rightfully so, we break the law, we go to court, the court brings us guilty, and thus we face our judgment and we do our time. Yet you're still a criminal. You're guilty until you can prove yourself as a poor man in this country, a needy person in this country, innocent. The natural resources of our country have been plundered by the world system through primarily two prime ministers in the last 21 years. We can go back, and I'm sure the facts will show, as our nation resources have been plundered by egregious governmental policy that a cabinet agrees upon, but one man has the final word. He choose who he want to run with him on his political ticket. The Bahamian people, we thinking we're voting for a party that really care deep down, especially based on what they say. But if we know our history records, that's why the world system in the past, the ones that are now dead, and the offspring of those who are dead, is now allowing corruption to reign in the Bahamas. The Bahamas is the only little nation on the planet but has a preamble that recognizes Yahweh. These men, for 21 years, have ran our country, and they never mention Yahweh's name in their mouth yet. Not once in 21 years, not in this country, and especially on national and international forums, not for their people to hear. And if there is a tape where any one of the sitting prime minister echoed the name Yahweh in public, I stand then to be corrected. Until then, they do not recognize the Hebrew name of God, Yahweh, the equivalent to the English Joshua, equivalent to the Greek Jesus, our Christ. The Yeshua is Hebrew. That is the name of the Hebrew Christ. That is the name of my God and Christ. And he have called me to be a God and not a dog. He have called me to live like a God. He have called you to live like a God and not a dog. It is okay for them to come on different wicked and crooked and corrupt senior pastors of churches. They come on these different talk shows. And when you analyze what they're saying, in most cases, it is true. Bishop Hall was correct when he said, and it was a suggestion that I made also over the years on these mediums, the Bahamian Airways to be Pacific, that parents need to be charged when it's found out, investigated and found out that their children have broken the law. Equally, while I agree with Bishop Hall, because that is the right thing to do, you agree with common sense. However, Bishop Hall, I also disagree with the fact that you would choose that position which is a correct position to take. But yet, you would talk in symbols and parables. No right-thinking Bahamian, if they want to build this country, can go along with corrupt practices, corrupt principles. Good and evil we will have with us always. We will always have Mr. Christie and Mr. Ingram with us. But we must no longer now choose them to hold such great, awesome power unabated. That's extreme, enormous. That's the power these two men held in the last 21 years. The natural resources of our country have been plundered because of their policies. Policies and agreements according to policies that were around from in the 1960s. That's egregious. That's even corrupt. I'm talking about 40 years later. They're doing zero, nothing to change it. They have no fear in their heart for what Amos is saying or doing on national and international airwaves. So, as the only sovereign, all right, the Bahamas will ever have, you're looking at him, they hid the historical truths and facts about my life and the life of my parents and the life of their parents, specifically primarily my father and his father, and then his father, go all the way back. Great Britain has the records. Birth and death records, recording office, Register General Office, birth and death department has the information in respect to who was the father of Willis Miller, the day he born and the day he died. And from these records, we can go all the way back up and piece in like a puzzle the historical truths that Great Britain today, and any one of the prime ministers who have ever led our country, minus Sir Lyndon, under his governments, our country prospered. He was our modern day Moses. Well, God did not wait for this country to about to celebrate 40 years. God did not wait for 60 years of reigning power. That means Her Majesty Elizabeth Alexandra Mary would have been reigning for 20 years. 20 years. Which also mean Her Majesty Elizabeth Alexandra Mary would have been reigning sovereign over these over these parts of the kingdom for 17 years to the day I born. And from the day I born in 1970, okay, to 2010, all right, represent 23 years. 20 years, pardon me. 17, and then another 3 makes the 20. So whatever the truth of the matter is, these records cannot be refuted. They are historical records signed by the generation before my mother and father's generation. They represent everything, that the essence of what it means to respect family, to have manners and respect for your family, your parents before you, because they're dead. As long as you're alive, it means that their spirit still lives on. This is not a racist conversation. This is a conversation for the world system to recognize and acknowledge that the Bahamas, the Bahamian people are fed up. Talk show after talk show is expressing their disgust in the way the country is being governed, in respect to illegal immigration, in respect to unemployment in our country, okay? the Bahamian people in respect to the mortgage crisis in the Bahamas. We were lied to. Okay? We were bamboozled, hoodwinked, led astray by black men and women of our complexion. They ran amok on us Bahamas, big time. They got our government. FNM and PLP is one. Let's face this music now. Your children depends on it. Excuse me. The young men in prison cannot wait for us to play around with their lives like the politicians are playing with the lives of a nation and generation. 40 years represents a generation. In other words, half of a generation, 2 prime ministers, the sitting prime minister, the Right Honorable Perry Glasson Christie, and the former prime minister, former Right Honorable Prime Minister Hubert Alexander Ingram. And by the way, I reiterate, the leader of the opposition, his name is Hubert Alexander as well, as the former Prime Minister Hubert Alexander is an Ingram, then the leader of the opposition, official opposition of the Bahamas, Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Hubert Alexander Minnis. There's no difference. All of y'all is one. All of y'all got who name is an Alexander, they follow and bow to the Queen Alexandra. And what I'm saying, the history of the Bahamian people goes all the way back to the dawn of time. That is the significance of these records. This association, the Auckland's Cricket Island and Long Key Association, ACLA, was established in Pinefield, Auckland in 1965. Yet, the everlasting monument on Pinefield, Auckland, the St. Luke Native Baptist Church, that was erected as a memorial, everlasting memorial, and in honor and in remembrance of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights document that was signed in December, the 9th of December, 1948. These are the sacred texts. My grandfather was president. These generation, they voted for him for 50 plus years. And I'm saying to the Bahamian people that it was possible because some powerful people made sure he was number one. They needed to watch. They like to watch the misery. So they were watching my family in misery. This is the day the young man who's entitled to be recognized according to history, according to doing some things in this country right, after the country's leader and system would know, as a young man, he did a whole lot of things wrong. Wrong. I'm sure a whole lot of Bahamian people telephones, the old telephones were exchanged for new ones last year, early part of this year, whatever. All the promotions BTC made in respect to exchanging smartphones, old phones, especially old smartphones, and replace them with brand new regular cell phones that has no ability to go on the internet and challenge Amos in respect to proof of what he claimed. Now they cannot talk 40 years of independence over this nation. Her Royal Majesty has to make some type of speech in respect to July 10th, 2013. I would have went to court July 5th, 2013 to answer a charge of threats of death towards Geddes and others who threatened to burn down this home. And because I said, if you try that, I will come look for you myself. You threatened to burn down this home and my home in Blue Hill Road South. This is the God's truth, and I speak it before the world and the nation of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and the Bahamian people. I do not promote violence. I'm against violence, but in my mother's house, sometimes she has her grandchildren here, including herself. She's sleeping right now. 68-year-old woman, July 12th, was threatened. Life was threatened, and she didn't even know what was going on. So who's this uncircumcised beast of an illegal immigrant that was deported out of America in 2005. 7 years later, not only was my ex-wife elevated to the general manager position, the former general manager was bought out so she can take that spot. And salary was doubled. Now she's working around these illegal immigrants now for 2 years at this time. General Electric, I name you as the culprit. Jeffrey R. Melt, primarily Pacific. That company will always be in problems as long as he's sitting in that chair from me. This company brought me before Sir Michael Barnett on September 13, 2011. And by the 21st of December, between the F&M government and the PLP government, in cahoots together, they did everything in their power to try to have me arrested. And the reason why my ex-wife was elevated to such prestigious position in the company that is known today now as GE Water Processing Technologies, formerly Aqua Designs Bahamas Limited. All is one. GE, you bought them. All of y'all is one. The royal family have great interest in General Electric Corporation in America. America's second largest multinational corporation on the planet. And many other governmental leaders in world systems have shares in that company. And you all have used your power and wealth and influence to influence the mind of a young lady who by right wasn't living the best either, but she did not deserve what you all tried. Or, regardless of whatever happened, now you're going to pay for her treachery towards me. And she's going to pay for the wrong she did. All right? For the wrong she did to me. Pardon me. All I'm saying is, by the grace of Yahweh, these records means a lot to me. These people might be dead and gone. But the orders that were given on the coat of arms and family crest in this book, okay, 1976, the year the Spirit of the Living Yahweh angel came to visit me. What are you going to do now, sister? Because the truth is out. And I want justice. The Bahamian brothers in this country want justice. The Bahamian people in this country want justice. And I'm saying to the Bahamian people, you must seize the opportunity to hid the royal truth about my life from you and about my house, because my house was always a kind house. On Pinefield Aucklands, we had a little food store. My grandfather was the one when Great Britain was lording and ruling over and reigning. Queen Elizabeth II was reigning over this country and breaking down the average Bahamian and black person. My grandfather sailed the high seas, risked his life, go to Haiti to bring back food to feed the Bahamian people. The Haitian people, we must always remember them and be kind to them. But we send them, and I send them a strong message. The criminals among you would bring you down. The scripture says, righteousness guards the person or a nation of integrity. Righteousness guards them. It's the guard. It's the rod and staff, shield and buckle, back and front, up and down and all around. Righteousness guards that person with integrity. The person with integrity, righteousness is his bodyguard. The wickedness overthrows the wicked sinner. And I'm going to live to the best of my ability according to the word of Yahweh with all human beings in peace and love and unity. But the natural resources will cost this nation, young men, have a greater opportunity in life. They have a future. Because their young ladies look upon them with respect for a change. And every attempt to prevent this from happening was done by the sitting Prime Minister, Perry Glasson Christie, and Hubert Alexander Ingram. And for 21 years, their position was, it is better for the majority of the young men, Bahamian men, Bahamian people, children, real Bahamian names, you check the record. The majority of the men in that person are your children, your families, your sons, your husbands, who has real native Bahamian name, whose parents and grandparents and great-grandparents born here. Now, my parents was here from 1492. And they hid the seed, a royal seed, son of a king. Great God, amen. Lineage of Christ, King David, and the Yeshua. Great men like King Azana. Okay? Great men who did great things were black. Now, I have made history in this world. Just the fact that I made it here to make this tape. Never did every negative thing in the planet that happened to me. And now today, I desire to have a decent young lady in my life. I ask God Yahweh, in the spirit of the Yeshua, to grant me the desires of this integrity. That I may be a righteous young man to the mother of the next young lady. That Father Yahweh, great God Almighty, Father of our sun, our moon, and our stars. What's wrong with the Bahamas? That it is okay for the United Nations to allow, and the American government and the British government and the Bahamian, by way of corrupt Bahamian officials, prime ministers primarily, and corrupt cabinet ministers, men and women, who went along with them. They could do nothing without your consent. They are charged and convicted for corruption. Guess what? All the men and women who sat in cabinet with these two men and passed laws. Yes, the people voted for y'all to lead us as a nation. Some of us voted the PLP, like myself. Never again, world, will I vote and take side. Because now I know I'm royalty. Problem is, they did everything in their power, all the money, all the authority to prevent me. They influenced in the talk shows to cut me short, XYZ, but yet Yahweh always come true. 25 years, Sir Lyndon led this country and it grew. Within the 25 years, some serious things happened and things had to go downhill. Absolutely agree with that. But, and under Hubert Ingram, a whole lot of things happened in his 15 years and 5 days that would not have happened under Perry Christie-led government if you'd have given Mr. Christie 21 years straight. And I voted for Mr. Christie because the Bahamian people voted. Sir Lyndon put him and Mr. Nordich before us. I was too young to vote at the time. But I remember people went with Mr. Christie. So in honor of democracy and in keeping with good governing and good practices, I went with the truth. A doctor is 10 times wiser, in my opinion, than any lawyer in this country. Any doctor is a much more critical and deeper thinker, and thus a knowledge-led government would be solid. However, how could you not remember the Deputy Prime Minister, Brave Davis, this young man, this man, young man, this man, he's an older man than I am now. He would have done an huge job for our country. The airspace in this country, America owes this country billions of dollars under Christie or a Brave Davis or a Dr. Nordich. We have problems getting that money. But under the recognition by the Bahamian people, see, you can't vote for me. These people voted a long time for this house to uphold the godly principle of Yahweh. And that in the time, 40 years from my birth, the country leaders in the church at the time, because this would have been dealing with the church and the government, these people would have been keeping an eye on and watching out for, and were the enemies because they wouldn't want these people to benefit from their natural resources and assets. Okay? Thus Yahweh stepped in. 40 years later, Yahweh stepped in again. So this is a strong, stern caution and message to the sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council. This is also a strong, stern, firm caution and message I send to the Royal House of Windsor by way of the Governor General, Sir folks. The people of the world has agreed that this young man is a royal heir. They allowed me to put major historical stuff that cannot be refuted by no one in government today. I'm 43, come the 2nd of June. 2nd of June, Her Majesty, Your Royal Majesty, you would turn 60 years as a reigning sovereign in this country. Okay? Reparation is now in order for this house. The nation of the Bahamas is owed by the world system $200 billion. And the reason for that Bahamas and world is because the economy of the Bahamas, when you put in total context, all the natural resources that the world system depends on, the world system by way of companies in their country, sovereign countries, nuclear bombs to prove it and to protect their interests. They're using this massive, egregious and aggression on a small little nation like ours. And the only way that can happen is because the sitting prime minister and the former one would have not risked their lives or the lives of their family for you or me, your children or mine. Furthermore, it's evident because their children never went to their own government schools that they have instituted. Now, I was not, and I re-emphasize, I was not supposed to make it. Stab wound is in the center of my head. 2 stab wound here. And this is the symbol of the resurrection of Amos's spiritual body and the resurrection of this Bahamas' spiritual body through the name Yahweh and his Christ, the Yeshua. The Greek, Adonai, Elohim, El Shaddai, Jehovah. And Jesus, we call him in the West. Still does not negate the fact what happened to this people and how this young man, family, got in the Bahamas. Great Britain, because it's 2013, does not negate the fact that and the world system, Church of Rome, the Royal House of Spain, King Aga Khan, you come into this country flying around a helicopter with a bunch of corrupt political officials on the F&M side of the government, and the Progressive Liberal Party going along with all the flow. All of y'all are corrupt men and women because y'all allowed for at least almost 40 years for world private companies, world government systems to own our natural resources and the sovereignty of the people because of y'all policy. How many times y'all went in the house? How many sessions y'all had in 21 years? Mr. Ingram and your extra 5 days. Excuse me. Okay, how many sessions y'all had? Knowing that y'all have sold out the Bahamas and sold the Bahamas and a whole lot of the Bahamian people land. And the only way the Bahamian people really know the truth is to remove your men. The Commissioner of Police, the best Commissioner of Police this nation have, is Ellington Greenslade. Reginald Ferguson is my number 2. Number 1 in his time. And then academically, Mr. Brother Greenslade, you got it, bro. And I support law and order. I don't care how much herb I smoke. If it wasn't for herb, I would have went crazy. Yet, pound for pound, put lying, cheating, corruption, taking advantage of the Bahamian people, misusing our monies, allowing government corporations to be run under the ground by homosexuals, the Bahamas government promoting homosexual bills and policies to befriend and to befriend and friend international organizations, the world, to befriend with the World Trade Organization, The Bahamas and the Bahamian people, all of us, we are sovereign. You might as well put all your bomb pointed at us and blow it up like you blew up that little nation in the Pacific many, many years ago, when y'all were experimenting on your first atom bomb. People of the Pacific nation is still sick from radiation and cancer. The very same poison, you find a way to put it in our food, mess with our mind mentally, while y'all use corrupt politicians who have compromised themselves over the years, because everybody know to do business in this country, it was what you were able to pay. You ain't gonna replace this history before it's told to the next generation, half my age. So y'all borrowed the young lady, she walk away with my 3 children. Bet y'all any money, till all this is over, in my life and or in my death, I'll be even greater. The Willis Miller house and name is now solidified in a firm foundation, rooted and grounded on the name Yahweh and His Son, the Christ, the Yeshua. There's nothing y'all can do in this house. Yahweh was here from the beginning. He allowed me and my house to be smart enough, as bad as we live like dogs, to still be honorable enough to be called royalty in a day like this, in this sinful time. So may the Yahweh continue to rebuke the sitting Prime Minister by removing from him all the negative nonsense that he is allowing by causing him now, because of these words and this young man, to rule with justice, and then to rule his country for the next year and a half with justice, common sense, dwell where good judgment is. I hate corruption, arrogance, and I hate it. So may God be glorified, and may the remaining of the resources of this country be saved by a strong group of Bahamian men, women, and children who would stand up with them fathers. Mothers now turning and relaxing, and fathers coming down the earth and standing with their children. Stop selling out your children for food. Stop selling your children so you can watch cable. To pay this very same company, you're settling for everything that is negative, everything that was taken from you. You're settling for trinkets. Your natural resources is $1 trillion economy. Will cost your sons and your daughters to be educated and to think, be critical, deep thinkers, to create think tanks all over the Bahamas to teach the world system. That is why that's why Yahweh kept us so small, while it was their plan to reduce us from elevating, because we are the people of the book, the last nation. Enough, we have the Bahamian name, Bahamians. The Millers in Eleuthera, the Millers in Andros, the Millers in Cat Island, the Millers in Acklands, Long Key, Long Island, all over. They're my family. Okay, so let the Yahweh now be glorified. Steve McKinney time is on.